Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for joining us today on our webinar for Great American Smokeout 2020. We will be going over innovative ideas for virtual activities and digital messaging during COVID. My name is Andrea Villaron. I am one of the college program coordinators with the California Youth Advocacy Network. A little housekeeping before we get started and really dive into the good stuff. Today's webinar will be recorded. We will send out an email link with the link to the recording as well as the presentation slides once they're available on our website. And yes, I am the one who sent out the toolkits from CYN. So we have a good amount of we have a large number of folks on today's webinar, and we'd like to know where you are all from. So if you can go to the upper right-hand corner of your video, click on the three dots and select the option to rename yourself. We'd love to know your name, your pronouns, your campus or organization. And you can feel free to use any acronyms if that's too long. So it should look something like this. Andrea, she, her, hers, and I am from CYAN. So many of us are probably very familiar with Zoom, but a little bit of instructions to keep in mind for today's webinar. We do encourage you to show your videos. So if you'd like, feel free to hover over the camcorder icon to start your video. You can also select a virtual background with the arrow next to the video, and feel free to show some reactions throughout the webinar. There's an option to give us a round of applause or to give us a thumbs up throughout the webinar. By default, everyone will be muted, and we will have a section where you can unmute yourself to share ideas and for questions. But until then, we ask that you please utilize the chat box for any questions or comments, and my colleague Christina will be monitoring the chat box throughout the webinar and also assist with any tech support. So a little bit about California Youth Advocacy Network, or CYAN. We are a statewide training and technical assistance provider, and we're funded by the California Department of Public Health Tobacco Control Program. And we work with you all to help engage youth and young adults in local tobacco control advocacy work in order to change the tobacco use culture in California's youth population, our colleges and universities, military installations, as well as other young adult communities. A little bit of an overview on the work that we do. We have a youth program that focuses on increasing and strengthening youth engagement in tobacco control work to impact local policy change. Our college program, which I am a part of, works directly with college and university campuses to support the adoption, implementation, and compliance of smoke and tobacco-free policies, as well as the promotion of campus-based tobacco treatment services. And we also focus on emerging products. So we work to provide education to young people, adult partners, and communities about emerging tobacco and nicotine products. And we provide resources to help support young people quitting tobacco. On the slide, you can see that we offer the following types of support: technical assistance, training, statewide leadership opportunities, system-wide advocacy campaigns, educational materials and publications, along with opportunities for networking. So for today's webinar, we'll talk about young adult tobacco use and how that might have been impacted by COVID-19. Then we'll talk about how to utilize Great American Smokeout as an opportunity to support young people with quitting, and ideas for your virtual events and activities for Great American Smokeout. Lastly, we'll go over resources from CYN and our partners to support you in your events, as well as to support young people who are quitting tobacco during this time. So by the end of the webinar, we do hope to provide you with ideas for hosting your virtual activities for Great American Smokeout. We also want to highlight tools and resources that you can use for education, advocacy, and tobacco treatment efforts on campuses during this time. And we want to continue to provide you all with that support for motivating and supporting young people who are quitting tobacco during COVID. So a little bit of history about Great American Smokeout. This event was created by the American Cancer Society over 40 years ago, and it was intended to help support tobacco users in committing to healthy tobacco-free lives. So this is really a great opportunity to encourage people to either make a quit plan or to initiate a quit plan on the state, and to also highlight the tools that they can use to quit and to stay quit. And so at CYAN, we provide support to college and university campuses throughout California in their efforts to promote smoke and tobacco-free policies and tobacco treatment on this day. Great American Smokeout is held on the third Thursday of November. So this year that would be November 19th. However, you're more than welcome to host your event on a different date or even make it a week-long or a month-long event. So now let's talk about young adult tobacco use and why we focus on young adults. So it's important for us to set that foundation so we know how to talk to young people when we're encouraging quitting, and we understand the messaging when it comes to motivating and supporting them with their quit attempts. So historically, youth and young adults were not typically daily tobacco users, rather they were more social users. However, with the increase in youth vaping, we are seeing that shift from non-daily to daily use. We also know that addiction establishment happens by the age of 25. Dual use is very common with young people, with e-cigarettes being the most commonly reported product that's used in combination with another tobacco product. We also know that flavors are very popular among young people. They mask the harshness of the tobacco or nicotine, and a large portion of young people actually start with a flavored product. The good news is that most tobacco users are interested in quitting, and young adults actually have the highest quit attempt rate. When we compare that to general adult use, we are actually seeing the opposite. So with older adults, we're seeing that they're more consistently daily tobacco users, they experience longer addictions, and it's more difficult for them to quit. So on the next few slides, we're going to take a look at data that's specific to youth. It's important to keep in mind that while this is youth data, that many of these individuals may have since entered college, or they might be incoming freshmen in years to come. So we've seen nationally that the use of e-cigarettes is greater than any other tobacco product. There was a slight decrease in 2015 with an uptick in 2017. However, since 2018, we've seen a surge in current e-cigarette use. So on the slide, you can see that current combustible cigarette use has dropped. However, current e-cigarette use has increased dramatically, especially throughout the past few years. We're seeing a similar trend with young adults between the ages of 18 through 24. So nationally, we've seen that cigarette use has also decreased between 2014 and 2018. However, e-cigarette use has increased from 5.1% to 7.6%. Now, when we take a look at both nicotine vaping and marijuana vaping among college students, we are seeing that there's an increase for both. And when you compare this to young adults who are not in college, there's a significant difference between the two populations. So on the left, you can see that for past month nicotine vaping, the rates for college students almost more than doubled, from 6.1% to 15.5%. In comparison, non-college young adults went from 7.9% to 12.5%, and this period was between 2017 and 2018. On the right, you can see that past month marijuana vaping has also doubled for college students, increasing from 5.2% to 10.9%. Meanwhile, young adults who were not in college, we saw almost no change. Now, when we take a look at California, we do see that cigarette use continues to decline. However, e-cigarette use and marijuana use continue to increase. Furthermore, young adult tobacco users, about 57.7% use a flavored tobacco product. So college attendance may reduce young adults' risk of cigarette smoking, but may not reduce the risk of using other tobacco products. We're seeing this with products like e-cigarette and hookah. So now that we've talked about young adult tobacco use, what has changed and what has stayed the same during COVID-19? So we know that COVID-19 attacks the lungs, and we know that smoking and vaping harms the lungs, and that puts tobacco users at a greater risk for severe symptoms if they're infected with COVID-19. But while smoking and vaping are avoidable risk factors that can contribute to poor health, is knowing the question that we have for young adults is knowing the association between COVID and tobacco use enough to motivate them to quit tobacco? However, it's important to consider that there are other factors um, that might contribute to their tobacco use behavior, especially when some might be less concerned with COVID due to their age group, or it might be less of a concern because of they're more concerned with their current state of well-being. So it's kind of that short-term versus long-term health effects. So while we've all had to adapt to changes in our daily routines as a result of the pandemic, we do know that people are still experiencing feelings like stress, boredom, self-isolation, and even Zoom fatigue. So let's take a look at how stress and boredom may affect college students and their tobacco use. So one study found that there were multiple functions that were served by smoking, particularly during finals week. So smoking was a way for students to alleviate any stress or cope with anticipated stress, especially if they knew that they were going to enter a stressful time such as finals. It was also a way to take a shorter break to refocus as well. Because of finals and the lack of classes and people constantly studying, it was also a way to deal with states of boredom that they were experiencing during those periods. Smoke breaks were also a great way to socialize and to catch up with friends quickly, especially when there were no parties or classes due to finals. It was also a way to celebrate and kind of shift the mood from constantly studying during finals week to being social, which is similar when you think about how people will go out for drinks after work, after a long day of work or after a long work week. So it's important to note that while many have adjusted to this new normal of learning virtually, midterms and final exams do continue to be periods of high stress for students. So the big question that everyone has is COVID-19 changing tobacco use? And what does that look like, especially for college students? So the rescue agency conducted focus groups with teens pre-COVID and during COVID, and they interviewed a mix of participants who were either current 30-day users or non-users who were susceptible. So they had reported that they weren't vaping, but they were open to vaping in the near future. So in terms of experimentation, we saw that rates may be decreasing due to decreased peer interaction. So because people were staying at home and sheltering in place, that kind of eliminated the social aspect for those who consider themselves who would only vape in social situations. With decreased peer interactions, that also led to less access to products. So if a teen didn't have a vaping product of their own and they relied on using a peer's product to take a hit, that eliminated it because they weren't really interacting with other people outside of their household. Increased parent exposure was also a factor in decreasing rates. While students are learning from home, a lot of parents were also working from home. So there was a higher risk of exposure to their parents if they were to vape inside the household. Now with regular users, they saw that rates may be increasing due to boredom and because of fewer social interactions. So there was less things to do. There were less places to go, so people were thinking about vaping more. It was also a means to cope and alleviate any stress that they were experiencing during quarantine. And because of increased use, it also led to acceleration of their addiction. So now that we've talked about how young adult tobacco use might have changed during COVID or how it might have stayed the same, let's talk about how campuses can utilize Great American Smokeout to really support students, even though events and campus operations in 2020 do look different. So we've separated things to focus on for campuses into 3 categories. So the first is education, making sure that we utilize social media and virtual platforms to continue educating students on the negative impact of tobacco use. Second is advocacy. So even though campuses are operating virtually, making sure that we're still advocating for healthier communities and 100 smoke and tobacco-free policies. And third is tobacco treatment. So continuing to motivate and encourage young people in quitting tobacco, and also promoting free or low cost resources that are available to them if they support quitting during this time. So some possible topics on education for social media include knowing the risks. So really educate young people about the chemicals in tobacco products, addiction and mood changes, as well as how tobacco use can affect brain development, especially since they're under 25. Second, addiction awareness. So really identifying those nuanced signs of addiction that people may not be aware of, or they might not associate with nicotine addiction. We did hold some focus groups with some students earlier this year in the spring, and some of the students had shared that when they think of addiction, they think of the more severe symptoms that come with addiction that might be portrayed on in the media or on TV. So really highlighting some of the smaller symptoms that they might not even think are associated with addiction. And then continue to make that association between COVID-19 and tobacco use and the health risks that come with using tobacco, which is really important, especially for young people, because they might not feel like COVID personally affects them. When it comes to, they might not feel that COVID personally affects them because of their age group. So really emphasizing that tobacco use does put them at a higher risk for experiencing COVID symptoms and even severe symptoms. So when utilizing social media for education, you want to make sure that your posts are contain concise messaging and that the content grabs the audience's attention. So you can use social media posts to make a call to action to quit. You can also further link them to a website such as your campus health center website or even CYAN's Quit Tobacco page. You can utilize social media for virtual events. Our partners at the Truth Initiative highlighted that a campus used social media to do a virtual tobacco waste pickup cleanup. So you can encourage students to pick up waste either locally in their neighborhood or on campus, and to post that on their own personal social media pages and use a special hashtag for your event. Another way to answer questions and to educate students is to host virtual Q&As. And so you can educate them on tobacco use as well as different products. An example of this is our partners at Sac States are doing a Vexed About Vaping Q&A on their Instagram page before Great American Smokeout, so that their followers can get more information about vaping or answer any questions that they might have about tobacco use. So some other ideas for virtual events include art and video contests. Encourage your students to get creative and to use art or to make a video as an outlet to educate their own peers about tobacco use, and even encourage them to quit. Gamer trivia nights are also a really fun and interactive way to engage students into and kind of test out their knowledge to see what they know about vaping or tobacco use, and even provide some education on some misinformation that they might have. And as we're all very familiar, because we're on here today, webinars are also a way that you can educate students about tobacco use and tobacco products. Some tips for engagement that we do have is to work with any students that is to encourage students that you work with to participate or even to facilitate events. So would be a great opportunity to loop in any student health educators, any student ambassadors, student staff that you might be working with. And if possible, you can randomly select a participant or a few to win a free gift card or to win free items if they participate in your events or your activities. We also encourage you to partner with campus organizations or clubs to participate. So you can tag them on your own social media accounts and encourage them to share your posts so you can increase the reach of your audience on social media. We do recommend, though, that if you are hosting an actual event, like a webinar or an event on Zoom, to be mindful of the event time and length. We've seen and we've probably experienced that Zoom fatigue that I had mentioned earlier. So if it can be a little bit daunting for students to see 2 hour long events after a full day of classes. You also want to make sure that if you are hosting an event, that you're keeping the time in mind. So if you host an event while a large number of students are in classes, you won't get a lot of participation. So now, next, let's talk about advocacy and what we can focus on while campuses operate virtually. So shifting that focus to reopening campus is 100% smoking tobacco free. Some might have that argument that there's no point in worrying about tobacco free policies if campuses are operating virtually and there's no one on campus for these policies to affect. But it's important that we consider the risk of severe symptoms among tobacco users if they are infected with COVID. So continue having those conversations and express those concerns about the spread of COVID through secondhand smoke. It's also important to emphasize that if your campus does reopen tobacco free, it actually helps decrease the spread and the risk. Second, continue advocating to support students. As I mentioned earlier, stress and boredom during the pandemic can lead to an increase in tobacco use. So it's important that we continue to promote campus resources if you're able to offer those during this time, and also promote any free or low-cost resources to students who are interested in quitting. And continue to make new connections and build partnerships. So work with students and any campus partners to build those strategies to advocate for smoke and tobacco-free policies. So some messages that you can use around advocacy. Tobacco-free campuses are important now more than ever, especially with COVID-19 and lung health being a really big concern. By adopting a 100% smoke and tobacco-free policy, campuses can create that confidence that the campus is committed to protecting the health of the students and staff. And so returning to campus when it does reopen should be as worry-free as possible for both student and staff. Also, secondhand smoke affects more than just the tobacco users, and it can compromise the health of students regardless of their use. So tobacco-free policies really do allow a space for healthier campus communities. So some actions that you can take during the pandemic, continue to participate in those leadership meetings, discussion panels, general assembly meetings. You can even invite key stakeholders to your presentations or discussions about reopening smoke and tobacco free, and really take that time to express how tobacco use is still a concern even during the pandemic. You can also draft a letter of support for a tobacco-free campus and organize support from different organizations and groups on campuses. So some resources that CYN provides on our CA tobaccofreecolleges.org website include model policy, a model resolution of support, tobacco-free rationale and talking points, example policies, as well as our annual policy report card. So now let's talk about tobacco treatment and motivating quit attempts and supporting quit attempts during this time. So when using social media to motivate quit attempts, the message matters. So making sure that we're sharing messages that may encourage students to contemplate quitting. We know that there's a huge focus on making sure that we're taking care of our mental health. So messages like quitting vaping can lower your stress, anxiety, irritability, and mood swings is very relevant to young people. Also including messages around stress management, health, and tips to keep busy while at home. So an example of a message that we used in our last digital campaign was keep your hands busy and free of tobacco. And we included an image of a young person holding art supplies. So kind of keeping in mind that people have been getting into hobbies during quarantine. And lastly, I just want to make a note that CYN will be releasing a new digital campaign for Great American Smokeout, and we actually received feedback from some of our student leaders throughout the state to craft messaging around health, cost, and addiction stigma, along with more quick tips and support. So this is not the digital campaign that I had just talked about, but this is an example. This is just an overview of the digital campaign that we released earlier this year, around the time when shelter in place and everyone was starting to quarantine. So we really wanted to reach out to students and really create messaging that was relevant to them as they were starting to quarantine and to shelter in place and social distance, and they might have been feeling anxiety, stress, or self-isolation. So sometimes making it a challenge is enough to motivate people to quit. So challenge people to try quitting for even just a day on November 19th. You can share a digital pledge, a template for students and staff to share why they chose to quit tobacco or why they stay tobacco free. You can, if you know any students who are willing to share their quit stories, you can encourage them. That's a great way to let other young adults know that it is possible to quit and that they're not alone. And I do see a question about the social media content that we have. We will be releasing that content for anyone to use. So it is available for campuses to use. And so beyond social media, you can also include messages about quitting tobacco in other health classes and events. And you can also add motivational messages to your campus health center website. If possible, you can also utilize any other websites, campus websites that students might frequent. So now we've talked about motivating quit attempts. Let's talk about how we can support quit attempts now that students are interested in quitting or have made that plan to quit. So share quit tips on social media pages. Some example messages that we used for our last campaign include dance and movement can reduce stress, boredom, and help you be more successful at quitting tobacco. Some other quit tips that we've heard from our student leaders include stress management tips, so going out for a walk or journaling, maybe picking up a hobby like cooking. Second, promote quit resources on your campus website. So you can either lead them to our Quit Tobacco page. We have a lot of resources specific for youth and young adults. We also have resources on there that include the California Smokers Helpline. So their No Butts page or their No Vape page for students who are looking to quit vaping specifically. We also have information about the This Is Quitting app from the Truth Initiative, as well as the Quit Start app. And lastly, advertise any available tobacco treatment services. There might be students who are looking to quit or looking for support, but they might not be aware of any tobacco treatment services available on campus or even in their own community. So if you're offering things like virtual counseling, that's something that you can promote, any access to free or low-cost nicotine replacement therapy products, any local tobacco treatment product programs from community partners. And if you're able to, you can distribute quit kits to students on campus. So before we go over resources, we'd love to hear from you all in the field to share any ideas. So what are you doing for Great American Smokeout this year? And even if you're not quite sure what you're doing or you're still trying to process ideas, feel free to share how you've engaged with students while campuses operate virtually this year. So I will open up the floor if you want to unmute yourself, or you can utilize the chat box to share your ideas with everyone on this webinar.
Andrea, we have a question from Sonia Mendez asking, will the slides be available?
Yes, we will send out an email with the slides as well as the presentation recording. Okay. Moana from CASA said that they will be doing a countdown to Great American Smokeout with follow-up supportive posts afterwards. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, Great American Smokeout is on November 19th, but you're more than welcome to utilize a week or even a whole month to kind of count down or to lead up to Great American Smokeout. So provide one thing that we've heard from our partners at Skyline is they are getting the word out about Great American Smokeout, really building up to it, and then they'll actually host a virtual event on the date. So preparing people for the event. So it's not just a one-day thing, it could be a multiple day thing. Thanks for sharing, Moana. Great. So Christy shared that they are doing an Ask the Experts virtual event. So it sounds like it's kind of like office hours. So they will be having some trained nurses and staff from the Student Health Center to sit on Zoom, and students can drop in and ask for questions or resources. I like that idea. Thank you for sharing. Oh, and quit kits as well. We have a question from Veronica. Yes, so we will provide resources. I will go over the different resources that we could provide in a minute, but we are still providing resources for your events this year. Great, and VCC is adding flyers to the distribution of food bags for Great American Smokeout, as well as information on the helpline. Great, these are great ideas. And Vera mentioned that they will be doing a video podcast from the public health department about tobacco and quitting. Yeah, podcasts are really popular, especially now, so that's a great idea. Okay, so we will move on. If you have any more ideas, feel free to drop them in the chat box. And we'll also have a section later on at the end of the webinar to go over any additional comments or questions that you might have. So resources. So CYN can provide quit kits, materials to assemble quit kits for college and university campuses. On the left, you can see some of the materials that we're providing this year. It includes a pen, a notepad for journaling, our guide to quitting tobacco, honey sticks, toothpicks, lollipops, gum, and sunflower seeds. So these are materials that we can make available to you. We do encourage that if you are unable to host an actual event, especially with everything and COVID and how campuses are operating, if you're able to keep them available on campus for students who are on campus or for pickup, you're more than welcome to request.
Chicken. I'm okay. I don't want any more. Maybe I'll have one more piece. I hope I cooked it well. I don't know.
You're more than welcome to request quit kit materials from us, and we can send that to you throughout the year. So we do encourage you to get creative with your quit kits. While we send these materials, you're more than welcome to add or remove anything. So in the past, our partners at Sac State actually put all of their materials in a water bottle, and that included information about their health center. They also included free coupons for NRTs that are available to students at their school pharmacy. And then on the right, you can see our partners at Los Compadres from LA County included tamarindo lollipops, as well as chicle gum and Spanish language material for their Hispanic Latinx community. And so quit kit supplies can be requested throughout the year. If you visit our college website, you can request materials. We also have Spanish language and student veteran materials that can be available to you upon request. I do see a question about how we can get these quit kits. I'll put my email in the chat box, and you can go ahead and email me and request them. We are still sending out some materials for Great American Smokeout if you'd like, but as I mentioned, even if you do not want, even if you're unable to have quit kits for Great American Smokeout, you can still request materials throughout the year.
On the quit kits, I would just like to say that we received our package from you, Andrea, today.
Oh, perfect. That was very quick.
And we're doing our first tobacco cessation workshop starting next Tuesday with our agency staff who want to quit smoking. And so,
that's great.
Yeah, but I just want to say I was so excited and so surprised when I opened the box. And the box included everything that we needed, except our own personal stuff within our agency, for for 25 toolkits. I can't begin to tell you how much we appreciate that. And the other thing is that I would just like to say that that eliminated the stress for us to have to figure out what we were going to put in it. And so I was just delighted.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. I know we were a little concerned about when those would be delivered, so I'm glad to hear that that came in a very timely manner, and that is very helpful. So I do see some questions about if these materials are only for college students. So at this time, we're providing the Quick Kit materials only to college and university campuses, although we are creating a resource for digital quick kits, so it just will provide any quick tips or any of the materials that we're putting into our own quick kits. They are accessible in grocery stores. So if a young person wanted to have support, they can actually go to the store and get like a bag of gum or something. And so we'll provide information as to the items that we're putting in these quick kits, along with why we're putting the items in there, and additional quick tips for support. So another resource that we have is our Quit Tobacco page. I've put the link on this slide. And so this is just a hub of resources for youth and young adults to quit vaping and tobacco. So we include information about the risks of tobacco use and vaping specifically, along with some quick tips. And we also have resources from the helpline, along with any apps or texting programs that young people can use if they need support with quitting tobacco. And so additional resources that we can provide from CYN for Great American Smokeout include our 2020 event toolkit that will be made available for download soon. And it will include ideas from today's webinar, as well as additional resources and information from our partners. We also still are providing educational materials. So if you'd like, you can either download that, or you can order it and we can ship it to you directly. And so these materials include our Myths and Reality series on different tobacco products, just debunking some of the misinformation that young people might have about these products. Our Guide to Quitting Tobacco, which is really formulated to provide resources for young adults specifically in college, and our new Know the Risk brochure. And as I mentioned, we will be releasing a digital media campaign, a little bit of information on that. It was created by CYN in partnership with our Campuses Organized and United for Good Health, or our COF Coalition, and that's just our group of student leaders throughout California, college students throughout California. And they really helped us provide some feedback and some messaging that would really appeal to young adults and to college students. So we're currently working on getting those tested, and then we'll have that available for use for everyone to utilize on their own social media pages. So I will open the floor for any questions or any comments, and I can answer any questions that were in the chat box as well. So Carly, I see your question. So I think it looks like for Quick Kit materials, they may not be, that option may not be available on our website just yet. So I will go ahead and drop information in the chat box on how to receive those Quick Kits. So you can just send me an email and we can get that shipped out to you within the next few weeks. Any other questions or comments that anyone would like to share?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm Teresa from Shippo College, and I have been taking, we made a resolution and the Senate passed it and Health and Safety passed it. I'm trying to get it through to Academic Senate and Classified Senate. And all I want to know if I can, I need more materials on it so I can, go to them. That's my final two sentence I have to go to get it passed. But I have been trying. I have been trying to. Just before the epidemic, I went through all the different sentences, and I'm really close to getting it passed.
Oh, okay, that's great to hear. So Teresa, I will actually privately chat you the email for our other college program coordinator, Alex, and she can assist with that process and kind of provide you with those resources. She really specializes in our policies, so she can help you with providing those resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
And hey, Andrea, this is Kim. If I can just hop into Teresa, that's really exciting news out of Chabot College. Our team right now is actually working with the Public Health Law and Policy Center to update the language for our model policies. We do have model policies written specifically for all of the campuses, uniquely for their campus type. So for community colleges in California, we have a model board policy and an administrative procedure document that districts can just take on and make their own. We're just having the language checked right now to make sure all definitions are up to date and match what we have in our state law, which we previously did when law changed, but we do want to make sure that it's inclusive of all products that can be smoked or vaporized. And we also are looking at actually making some revisions to our enforcement language. We really want to ensure that the recommendations we have for enforcement are equitable. And so we will be making some changes there and then creating some new materials to support campuses with having stronger educational components to increase compliance. So just stay on the lookout for those. But in the meantime, as Andrea said, you can reach out to Alex and Alex can get you, any of these policies are also on our college website. Or any of the other things, if we can help getting those through with those other governance bodies on your campus, please don't hesitate in contacting us. There's all sorts of really great things happening right now on the community college campuses. And I know that we have a strategy exchange coming up in November, and that will be a great space to talk about some of the advocacy work that you're doing and hear from other people.
Thanks for sharing, Kim. And thanks for your question, Teresa. I did privately chat you, so go ahead and check that out for Alex's email. I'd like to open up the floor for any other questions or comments that anyone would like to make. Okay, so, oh, did I hear someone?
Yeah, sorry. I did have a question for Stephanie Hoover. I know she mentioned she was going to start doing cessation classes, if I'm not wrong. Is it going to be with people within your facility or clients or patients?
Well, it's my first cessation group before I do an actual one with patients in January. And so what I did was I invited all of our staff and asked if those that wanted to participate in a cessation workshop that they can register so that I can do one full 6 to 8 session workshop before I actually do it through the first one with our actual patients.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And hey, everyone. Again, this is Kim. I wanted to share in response to a comment that Shannon had shared about local health departments providing tobacco treatment quit kits. So that's definitely something that we're seeing more and more California tobacco control projects doing, is providing quit kits. And a lot of locations are doing this in partnership with TUPE programs so that they can be provided to K through 12 schools. So that is a really great partnership, and it's a really great thing to do. If you have funding to be able to provide those quit kits, we're happy to send you where we get all of our supplies from and what that looks like and how to do it. Our team has actually thought about putting a quit kit button on our website so that youth and young adults can request quit kits and we could mail them directly to their homes. And we're a little bit hesitant on that, as we don't want young people who are living at home and may not have shared with their family members that they are tobacco users expose that to them. So that's why we're going the virtual quick kit route right now. But if there are ways that you can get young people, either college students or younger, or even adult partners as quick kits, there's a lot of great opportunity to do that. And we know here in Sac County, they're doing work with TUPE and with a parent group to get those quick kits out, not just to youth, but also to families. And a really easy way of doing that is when families come to get food, the lunches for their kids or pickups for materials from teachers, making sure that quick kits are accessible there. So just reach out to Andrea if you have questions about what we have in our quick kits, and we can share all of that information with you.
So a question in the chat box is, are the quick kits free or low cost? So the quick kits that we provide to campuses, college and university campuses, are free. So we can, CYN can provide that to college and universities free of charge. If we're unable to send it to you, or if maybe you want to go the route of obtaining the materials yourself, they are low cost. Let me go back to the slide with our quick kits so you can kind of see what we put in there. We put things like honey sticks or toothpicks, lollipops, gum. So those are all things that you can obtain at the store. It should be fairly low cost. And we do have a personalized or a customized notepad, but you're more than welcome to encourage people to journal on a piece of paper or to using any of their household items as well. Great. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, so I will stay on the call for a little bit longer if anyone does have any questions, or you can feel free to utilize the chat box as well. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending out the presentation slides and the recording for the webinar, and provide information on our website with our event toolkit, as well as our social media campaign that will be available on partners as well as through our email listserv. So feel free to subscribe to our email list if you are not already. Otherwise, if you have no further questions, feel free to hop off. You can email me if you'd like.
I was wondering how I could sign up for your email list.
Yes, so you can go to our website, and there's a button at the bottom to subscribe to our email